Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Astrology and Beyond. Today, with your host Tatiana, also broadcasting for ANN Archetypal News Network. Today, I'm going to be talking about the astro weather of the second half of October. And this second half of October has a little bit of a mixed batch, maybe a lot of really important junction points at this time that we're going to be talking about. So just sit down, relax, brace yourself, and know that anything that happens in the world, you are always the master of your own reactions, of your own self. And you can always keep your own peace and your own center, regardless of what the world is going through or what you are going through personally in your own life. Remember, all our thoughts create our realities, and succumbing to the greater fears or the mass hysterias that could be potentially emerging in these times, or even throughout November. We know we're in very strange times with all the political arenas and elections and the US elections and elections everywhere, and there's a lot of natural disasters going on, Florida with the hurricane. There's like a lot of stuff going on in the world. I do not watch the news, so I prefer to stay more in my own inner internal self and broadcasting as much love, light, and positive energy I can in the world and in the world around me, so that I can affect my world with as much love, compassion as I possibly can. And I just recommend we do this as well, because we have the capacity to hold that and to hold enormous amount of compassion for people that are going through very difficult things at this time. But, and with this being said, the transits of this second half are kind of like a little bit of a mixed batch. So let's see. I'm going to share the presentation today. I had actually the time to do this, which is quite great. I actually like it. But if you don't, you can also let me know. I can always just be a talking head. Um, what am I doing? I'm trying to uh view. Sorry about that. Full screen. Ta-da! There it is. So the second half of October. And we're going to be also talking about the full moon in Aries that's coming up October 17th. And I think I'm going to start actually with that because it's coming quite soon. So let's look at the chart and what this all means, especially all these very tense aspects that are occurring at this moment. What happened here? Uh, I I was here and now I keep wanting to be big, but it doesn't let me be big. Okay, I guess I'm just gonna be small. Ah, okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, okay, so we're having the full moon in Aries, and it's here. This full moon is going to be conjuncting Chiron. So I'm just going to show a little bit what the elements, the players of this full moon are, and then we'll go diving deep into the archetypal analysis. This full moon obviously is in a position to, well, it's a full moon, so it's a opposition to the sun, but the sun here is going to be making a square to Mars in Cancer, and is going to be making a forming square to Pluto in Capricorn. And so this full moon is in a very tense situation where we have these crisis points. So this tense situation is going to bring up certain themes that we're going to be talking about. So that is one thing about the full moon, is this tension. And at the same time, we will have a little bit of a relief with Venus trining Neptune, and that will create a little bit of a relief. And we know that this sextile of Neptune and Uranus is also very active. So with the and we will also be having a trine of Jupiter to the sun. So this is something quite positive. So as much as there could be certain things in a lot of tension and difficulty, there's always ways to leverage that energy with the more positive aspects that are happening. So, with that being said, let me be small again so I can um, talk to you about this. So, the first thing that we saw, that Sun, Mars, Pluto energy, uh, it's a very could be a very intense energy, and this energy, especially because Mars and Pluto are going to be in this opposition for a while, and into November. Let's read from The Archetypal Universe by Rand Butler. What a Sun Mars Pluto energy could be bringing into our collective psyche. So, if in more tense aspects, the energy is most likely to play out this way. Extreme yang energies, a competitive and combative nature, a glorification of strength and willpower, ruthless ambition, obnoxious directness, overbearing machismo, inclinations towards aggression and force, a habit of riding roughshod over other people's feelings and boundaries, forcing issues in attempts at redress, urges to dominate and coerce others, which arouse intense opposition and backlash, a love of combat and strife, identification with warriors, obnoxious sexual advances, sadistic tendencies, the angry father, revulsion toward one's own yang energies, the potential to overexert oneself and push too hard. So, in reading this, I am going to share a little bit of something that comes to mind. I watched the other day the movie Ants from 1998. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but if you can, go watch it. It's called Ants. And it's an animated movie about this ant colony that is ruled by a general. And, there's the queen, there's the whole palace, the queen, all up there. Then there's all these worker ants. I'm not going to give the spoiler alert of the whole movie, but that's the context. They're the worker ants, and there's this one little ant who's wondering, who wants to break free. Why was I born in as a worker? I don't want to do this. It does not give me meaning. There's no meaning to this, to my life as a worker. Just there has to be more to this. And so the whole story just unfolds as this general is trying to, like, sheer power, just get rid of all the weak ones and just have a total control and create a new colony, and then sending all the soldiers to die. And it's just this very ruthless energy, and they all go to battle. And well, I'm not gonna do the spoiler alert of the movie, but in reality is this like exertion of extreme power and oppression, the powers at play, the powers that have control over entire populations, and the masses that just don't question. But when people start questioning, start pushing back, then what happens is there's a backlash. There's the perpetrator energy just comes in with this extreme force. And what is the perpetrator energy? And this is where we can have the opportunity, and this is the opportunity to heal the deep, deep, deep masculine wounds, the very deep inner child wounds. And this is why Chiron is part of this mix. Chiron, the wounded healer in Aries, has been highlighting that quintessential masculine wound. It's the one that couldn't protect. It's the one that didn't have courage. It's the one that got killed when going out to battle. And the wound of rejection is the wound of not being capable, is the wound of being diminished, is the wound. It's the wound of rejection, is the first quintessential rejection. It's the rejection. It could be rejection of the mother, rejection of the feminine. It's the quintessential rejection wound. And what happens is throughout this rejection wound, or even the warrior, the wounded warrior, because this is the wounded warrior that we've been talking about, doesn't feel safe in the territory, could not defend men. Maybe it was some army or people pillaging a village and the men not being able to protect their homes and their families and seeing their villages destroyed and killed. And this is unfortunately what also happens to this day at war. And again, I'm not one to watch the news, so I would not be able to give accurate pictures, but of course I am in the know. There's still the war going on in Russia and Ukraine, and all these things, and what's happening in Israel. And like we know that these things are devastating for many people in the world. And let's not even think about all the places that we don't even know that these wars and are happening. And it's not just the big wars that we know about. It's also the small wars that happen in between families, between people, between neighbors. It's just that the archetypal you know. So what happens with this perpetrator energy? We have to question ourselves. Why has the masculine kept perpetuating the perpetrator wound, which is the rape wound, the pillaging wound? It's because they themselves probably have the same wound, you know? If I was abused, then I'll become the abuser. It's just very simple, and it just keeps going on. If I have control and I have the capacity to oppress because I was oppressed, or if I was deeply rejected and wounded, and then I have a lot of anger, then I will become the one pushing. It's all this just these just gets revealed. And Pluto is moving now direct, finally, its final pass in Capricorn at the 29th degree, where it will be exposing for the last time all the dysfunction of the power structures, all the dysfunction. And it's interesting because this movie ends really was about the powers at play did not care about the well-being of the people, the colony. They didn't really care about their well-being, just about power for the sake of power and control. And this is something that is being shown in our world more and more through these times. And through this full moon, this might be more in evidence. Things come up, so we might be seeing heated debates in the political arenas, all the power trying to squeeze again, and people trying to fight back, and all. And this can create immense amounts of tension, crisis, and even death. And this is where death and destruction, this is where Pluto comes in. And Pluto and Mars is the quintessential death and destruction, is just pushing for the sake of just pushing. And I actually wanted to share this from the movie Ants. I don't know if you can see it properly, but I hope you can. This little clip where the termites come to attack, and the ants are just attacking the termites for the sake of just creating war, not even for a real valid reason. And then there's this rage coming in, this rampage, and all the termites, you can see them, they're like attacking. And I took it's a cartoon, and then there is this ant, just you see the face, they're just attacking, and it's just brute force. And it's also the defensive energies. And why do I talk about defense? Because it's also about defending territories. And this is where we see this is my territory, this is my territory, this is right. Might makes right, and then we are right, we can attack. It's that energy of the defense of the family, of the territory, of the the warrior. And the energy in Mars now is in Cancer, which is very linked to defending the territory, the safe zone, the people we love. But in that, what happens is we can tear apart the actual unity, and instead of coming together to heal together, that destroys. So this energy of destruction can be very present within this next 15 days to like this next month, let's say. This energy can just amp up and ramp up. So the invitation of this energy, as always, is not just to suffer a crisis for the sake of suffering a crisis. The invitation of this energy is to heal the deep, deep-seated masculine wound. The masculine wound of rejection, the masculine wound of not being capable to stand up for oneself, the masculine wound of having been maybe rejected again by the feminine. Maybe it was the quintessential mother wound. The mother's too busy, kids over there, mom's hitting the kid, or dad as well. It's just the wound is the childhood wound of the masculine. Is the I'm not saying anything, but then I'll pick on the smaller kid, because my dad or my mom are abusing me, so I can pick on the smaller thing. It's that cycle, and that cycle is coming up for healing. How do we heal this cycle? Well, it's very important, and this is both for men and women, because the masculine, remember, resides in both men and women. It's not just men. And let's not forget that this full moon is sponsored by Mars, because it's a full moon in Aries. So the main character here is Mars. And who is Mars? Is the will. Now, the will is fantastic. Remember, there's no right and wrong, good or bad. Will is just an amount of energy to do, to create, but it's also an amount of energy that can destroy. The same energy that creates is the same energy that destroys. So it's how we manage that energy. So in healing the masculine wound, by going and doing inner child work. What is the inner child work? The inner child work is going back in time and also forgiving the generations past, the generations and generations of men, that went to war, generations of men that lost their families, generations of men that could not defend their territories, generations of men that are tired of fighting. And fighting for the sake of fighting just perpetuates more fighting and more violence. And maybe there is a time where we have to say, well, stop. We can still, the masculine can still be in its full power, in its full beauty, without having to be a brute. And this is kind of essentially what this is about, is that those brute forces, the need for brutality, is what's going to be shown. This energy that with the sun, Pluto, and Mars, which is like really forceful, is the forceful ego, is the will. It's kind of like when you see police brutality, because they are in power and they can oppress others for the sake of displaying their power and their capacity. You see, and these are the energies that we might see again shown up, so we can make choices. If in your own life you're having this energy affect you for whatever reason, and it's coming up in you and in your own families, instead of going for the kill, this is the opportunity to choose again, and choose compassion, choose love, choose wisdom, and choose to look at that inner child that was wounded, that was not heard, that was shut down, that was abused, and tell that inner child that you love him, her, and that this inner child is safe. Why? Because it's looking for the quintessential nurturing safety place. These are the energies of the axis of Capricorn and Cancer. It's the axis of feeling safe. When we're nurtured, when we're safe, when we have everything that we need, and we feel grounded in our safety and emotional safety, then everything's good. Because then we have a solid ground to create and grow and connect to others. So this is the invitation of this time. So instead of giving in to the craziness of the world, what can you do right now, today, to address maybe internal fears, of your own inner power? And how are you maybe overpowering the smaller thing because you still have some kind of wound where you were not seen, where you were not heard, where you didn't have, or where you didn't feel safe and you had to run away or fight to protect yourself. Either way, the whole point is that is like a fractal. The wars in our world are projections of a collective consciousness of that. So if our collective consciousness can shift that, we can start with ourselves and our own environment. So and how we interact with our environment when these energies come up. So that is one important thing that's really happening. Uh, because also, like, of course, with this carbon, the emotional wounds around self-identity and independence will also come to light. The emotional wounds around self-identity and independence is also who am I, or have I been sent to fight for the wrong thing? You know what I mean? Sometimes we believe, and this is where part of this Jupiter retrograding and Jupiter trining the sun is also having the confidence to reclaim your own identity and what you truly believe. There is almost like beliefs will come into question. What do you believe? What gives you meaning? Who are you truly? Who are you? And what are you connected to? And what beliefs are fundamental to your identity? Or have you been fighting for, the old cause, the old cause meaning whatever your parental structures or other people told you to do. This is like where it gets very pervasive. It's like, well, why am I doing this? I don't know. I'm told, I'm told to do it, and you just do it. And again, I come back to these movie ants where these ants are just told to do it. They are not questioning it until the one little ant questions, why am I doing this? Is this my purpose? Is this the meaning of life? So in that respect, we need to reevaluate what gives us true meaning and what's connected to our divine identity. Now, so this can be very, very healing times, but not without the tensions that will occur within, obviously, relationships. We're still dealing with the Libra and Aries axis. So the more we deal with this axis, we're still going to have those themes come on and on and on. Now, the power struggles definitely will be around also the personal emotional needs versus the external authority or societal expectations. So, this is a theme that will keep coming up as well. My personal needs versus what society wants of me and the weight of that. And this is where we need to self-assess and make sure you're in alignment with the society you want to see. Essentially, if what you're seeing in society is not aligned to who you are, it does not resonate, then do something about it. Don't just follow like a sheep the expectation of your environment or your society or whoever. It's again about stepping into who you are. There might be struggles between being dominant or in control and expressing care or vulnerability, so there is this kind of struggle between what is to just protect or be in control, and then kind of showing a more tender side of yourself, and to see if you can actually access a more kind approach to resolving conflict. Because what happens with this square to the sun, Mars to the sun, is also that we might just act out of an ego-based response, rashly, without really thinking or considering. Or the other possibility is that the avoidance of conflict, it's kind of like we just go without necessarily finding other ways of addressing conflict. Is almost like the only way is to, and there are many ways to resolve conflict. There are many ways to sit around the table. There are many ways that are much more productive, and it starts with us, right? So we could also be experiencing manipulation or passive aggressiveness. There's a risk of hidden agendas and emotional manipulation or subtle powers at play. And this is the other tricky part of these energies, is that sometimes you don't see it coming, but you get yourself disempowered and you don't know why, but there's this like hidden agenda that's coming at you and you don't see it, but you kind of give your power away to people as well. So this is a time where we're needing to empower ourselves by looking at our shadows and by looking at what really, really isn't in resonance at all anymore. And with Pluto, with all things Pluto, it's if you're hanging on too tight to it, you will suffer. If you go, this needs to go, this needs to change, and do something about it. Now, do not overdo it. During this time, Mars, Pluto aspects also have the energy of force. Is, if it doesn't have lube, do not try and put it in. I mean, like like a engine. It's the engine without lube, it will burn, right? It will burn out. I don't know what were you thinking about, but you know what I mean. If there's no oil and the thing is just kind of forcing through, the thing burns. And this is essentially what's happening. This is not a time where it's easy. So we need to make it easy. We need to have those conversations. We need to come into more compassion. Now, the good thing about this full moon is that despite some conflicts that may arise, there is that trine of Venus to Neptune, and it's in water signs. So here's where, when we open up that other side and allow the waters of the intuition to come in, this is when things can soften. Basically, it's almost if we take all that energy of conflict and dump it into maybe into a creative endeavor. This is where you take all of that and create an art piece. Maybe what I call anger paintings. Anger paintings are great if you're experiencing frustrations, angers, the desire to, for whatever reason, because you get triggered. Grab a little notebook and make an anger painting. And maybe from that anger painting, something emerges. Maybe there is some kind of design or something that you see that you can even like, go, wow, I can move, and then get creative with it. I don't know. I'm just suggesting something. Or just let that be. Let that be the expression of it. That is one way of moving those energies. The other way is just really accessing the compassionate nature of life. So you can have deep, intense emotions through what's happening and have immense compassion. And this is, for example, and again, I go back to what happens in war and people suffering deeply, is that by having compassion and love for those who are suffering, we also help increase the vibration, because love is just seeing that all parts, any human or any being that suffers is ourselves. And this is the part that connects us to that Neptunian energy, that I am not separate from you. So if you are at war and in discord, I'm gonna feel that. So if conversely I can be more at peace and sending love to you, that might help appease, the at least in an energetic sense. And this is something I actually do, not every morning, but from time to time I do this, like a couple times a week, where I'm in my meditation. I do visualize the hearts of people in this beautiful pink bubble. And you can do this too. It costs nothing, just your 5 minutes in your bed before you get up. Breathing, envisioning, visualizing the light, taking that love energy from your heart, the compassionate energy, and visualizing people in this pink bubbles of love, literally. And that energy, that field that you can create of love, can extend to your family, even those people that you find obnoxious or that you don't like. If you do the effort to put them in these pink bubbles, this energy starts releasing. And also then the put it around the planet, and then see, or maybe even send energy to those places that are really having a hard time, people that are suffering through the loss of their homes, through the floodings, or people that are in the war zones, and all of that. We can affect the fields of consciousness with a couple of minutes of an intention of love and compassion. And of course, it's easy to say when it's not happening to you, because when we are the ones receiving all that, uh, the disaster or the crisis, we are like, ugh. But imagine when there is a helping hand that comes to you when you are in a time of crisis. that's what creates the true humanity connection. This is the humanitarian connection. So at this time, well, Venus, it's with that Neptune in the trine with Neptune is bringing that gentle, soft, beautiful energy of beauty, of compassion, of the feminine to the more harder aspects of ourselves. So again, within you, within your own self, you can, for example, it's a good time for artistic projects, film, poetry, music, writing, just so that's a good way of balancing out this harder energy. So again, what do we choose? Do we choose to stay in the negative, in the anger, in the fear, and give in to the fear and the combativeness, or do we give in to the compassion and the love and the possibility? And there will be a moment of choice, there's always a moment of choice where you can choose. You can choose to swing right or left. You can always choose. In this now moment, there is always a choice. And in the midst of this, you still have a choice. All right. So that is part of our first part of the second part of the month. Now, let's see what's going on as we move on a little bit further. So October 23rd, here the energies are going to be a little bit less tense. And again, we're still having the forming opposition to Pluto and Mars. So that will be going on for a while. However, there's going to be also other energies that are positive and helpful at this time. So let's look at, we have Mars will be trining Neptune, and we will also have Mercury trining Saturn. So these two aspects have so the Mars Neptune, this is where we can also find more compassion. And this is great because when we move for a cause with compassion, then the energy shifts from it's more like this is the action of the humanitarian. So we might see that within these acts of devastation and disaster, there is a lot of humanitarian display. And this is what's beautiful about this energy is the capacity to have compassionate action, or inspired action, courage to go and help people. So this is where we have to draw in our capacity to love others and help others that are in need. Or even if we don't, again, if we don't have much to offer, but just even a prayer, it's already helpful. Uh, so the other things, we have Mars in Cancer. Oh, and we have Mars also in a sextile to Uranus because we have this little trine here. So what could happen also is that there is a lot of possibility of breakthrough energy and of having instant energy and a drive. This is where if we have a motivation from a higher source, there's a higher source of motivation to do something that's inspired, and inspired action. Do it. Don't wait. Don't just think about it. Do what you can for people. This is a beautiful time where we can display our humanity and our love for others. And again, can be little things. It doesn't have to be huge things. um mm, uh, so we need to also we have Mercury in Scorpio in this trine to Saturn. So and this is the time where we can have some depth of thought, discipline, and strategic planning. This is where we can also have those conversations, those mature conversations. So if, for example, crisis is ensuing and there's all this chaos, this is the perfect time to bring about those deeper motivations and have the conversations that are mature. This is also a time to focus our energy, our mental energy, beautiful energy for discipline, but it's also discipline and action, right? Is both. So this is a great time for problem solving. So instead of creating more crisis, this is where we can solve the crisis, solve the problems by looking at things um, with a like level-headed. This is a good energy for that, to really look at the deeper issues, especially because Mercury is in Scorpio. So this might also be a time where we want to probe really deep into the real motivations for things, right? Um, so this is deep insight as well. The insights that come from the real raw parts of ourselves. And when we have those mature conversations, that can be helpful for solving problems, or even, again, strategic planning for things. And I don't know why I get these images of when there's a natural disaster, and then there's people coming together, and then there's the help, and then there's the strategy, and then there's the focus. Then we can create many new things and new structures that are even probably much better than the structures that came before, which is essentially also what's happening to our old world and the old structures that are crumbling in our society. Maybe the reason why all this thing is these like apocalyptic themes are coming so obvious into our world is probably because this is the time where all these old things need to leave so we can give headway to the new. The new is just coming, and we have the capacity to bring it about. Now we will be having a little bit later, we'll be having now Venus will be squaring Saturn. So and this is not a very fun aspect for Venus, but as we're bathing in these energies, that Venus will bring probably tensions, again, challenges in relationship. This is where we will also see whether or not the people that we align with are, I mean, this is where we will see or get triggered in our own self-worth and self-validation. And this is where we see whether or not the relationships we have, the friendships we have, are truly, they're true and real. This is where we can have also relationship issues and feel like this is where the rejection wound comes in, where we feel that we're not good enough, that we might not be socially acceptable, that we might not be maybe beautiful enough in our bodies. This is connected to self-worth. So during the times of Saturn square Venus is when we can also feel very limited in a relationship. We might feel limited and constrained. And again, it's not fun to be with people. Connections, we might desire a connection, but we might also desire a little bit more freedom and exploration of something different, and life might feel dull or stale if you are in partnership. And if you're not in a partnership but you're by yourself, you might feel very, very lonely. So this energies just want us to look at where we have not valued ourselves. Then what can happen too is, because value and finances are directly connected, this is a time where we might feel our finances are like in a difficult spot. So we might need to look at more practical ways of dealing with our finances. This is not a good time for spending, overspending, getting into debt. This is a time to really be strategic in your finances, and a little bit more conservative. This is also a time where you can be feeling like all pleasurable things are cut from your life, because Saturn has that effect of dumbing down the effects of Venus, all the Venusian things, which is beauty, grace, value. So again, it's a time that feels a little bit like restrictive, like that, the Depression era, the Great Depression, and that's a very Venus Saturn feel or field where we need to cut down on all the pleasures. You need to ration everything. Everything feels like the reality is that there's just not enough abundance. So in this case, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? We look into the source of all abundance, which is the source of all that is, which is the divine. The divine is where everything exists. And yes, you might say, oh, well, that's very philosophical. That's beautiful when you're really having to make ends meet. True, true that. But the reality is, look at it. Why are our ends not meeting? Why am I feeling rejected? Why am I feeling not belonging? Why do I feel all these things? Where does the fundamental wound of rejection or wound of abandonment or not feeling good enough? Because this is really all tied in. When Saturn touches Venus, it's always saying, look at this. Where have you maybe committed also to things that are not really give you any kind of pleasure or satisfaction, and why are you still giving yourself up? And so in a certain sense, where have you not given yourself value? And in this time, it's a good time, if those triggers comes up, to say to yourself in the mirror, this is when you wake up and see yourself in the mirror and do the mirror exercise. I love you. You are divine. You are perfect as you are. You are beautiful as you are. You are abundant. And then you say to yourself, you are abundant because you are alive. You're abundant because you are divine. And then it's a matter of repatterning your your belief systems around your own value. There's something very pervasive, and I know we kind of all do it. Hey, let's go do this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I don't have money. Can't do it. I don't have money. Oh, I'm broke today. How many times do you say in the day, I don't have money, I'm broke? I don't have money, I'm broke. And it's just like on repeat. And I'm not addressing every single person. I'm just saying that a lot of us have done that a lot. You just say, oh, I can't do this. I don't have money. That's such a common thing to say. So instead of saying, I can't do this, I don't have money, it's like an on repeat that just validates that. Is why do I cut myself from being able to receive the abundance or the capacity? So this is where you say, I have all resources available to me. And resources does not necessarily mean money. Resources sometimes is, let's say you want to do something, you say, I don't have money. But if instead of saying that, you say, I have all resources available to me to experience all the wonderful things I'd like to experience, then what happens? Maybe this person says, hey, I have an extra ticket my friend left, and would you like to go there? Just, I'll just give you this extra ticket, you know, instead of like, oh, I don't have money. Maybe that's what happens. You manifest something like, oh my gosh, I get to go because I aligned with the abundance of resources. So sometimes just changing and flipping the way we think and the way we word our reality is what slowly starts changing our reality. And that is a practice as well, catching those thoughts. Also, if you feel like you don't fit in, that you have to kind of do things to please others or you know, to be socially acceptable, and then you feel bad, you don't feel like you fit in, you feel like awkward, you don't feel pretty, all that. Let's hide behind this, you know. Why, again, exercise in the mirror, tell yourself you're beautiful, you're lovely, even in your pajamas, with your wrinkle here or whatever, and say to yourself, you are lovely, I love you, you're beautiful. And those are the things that help you shift. Because if you look in the mirror and say, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that. If you're a man and you're like, oh, I'm not tall enough, I'm not sexy, I have a big belly. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man. This is very pervasive. So this is where I'm gonna go. Please love yourselves, give yourselves love. Um, this is a time where we might also wish for some more meaningful connections. And this is where relationships are also tested. If your relationships are truly strong, then they will withstand all these triggers and these insecurities. It's when you're in a relationship and suddenly you feel that insecurity. They're going to leave because I'm not pretty enough. But if you give yourself the value and know that there's a bigger reason for a relationship to exist, this is where it is tested. If for whatever reason something's really not clicking, this is also where relationships can eventually start breaking apart, um, because they're not really meant to be. This is a time where that can happen as well. Now, what else do we have? We also have a grand trine at the end of the month. So by the end of the month, we will have this grand trine between Mars, Neptune, and Mercury. And this grand trine energy um, suggests, again, is inspired actions and words. This is emotional and like an intuitive and emotional drive to do things. This is where insights come. This is the moment where the thoughts you have connected to the insights of something that's bigger. This is when you open up, when we open up to the divine and receive the messages, and then we are able to do action. It's called inspired action through the right thought. This energy is beautiful for moving forward into action, um, into doing things that are going to be beneficial for the whole. And this is a very intuitive time. And I would say intuitive is because it's not about the mind. The mind does not receive the intuition for action. It's the heart. So when we're connected to the heart, the higher mind, which is represented by Uranus here, can actually start bringing the information, and Uranus is going to be in an opposition to Mercury. So there's two things that can occur with that. First, the Mercury, there could be some kind of mental breakthrough, some kind of flash, but it can also come very sudden, and it can produce a lot of havoc. So like blow up a circuit, when you have too much energy coming in and too many ideas and everything's so scattered, suddenly you have this like overload of stimulation and ideas and information, you might kind of blow up a circuit. So what's important is to be able to be a little bit more practical, So if you have many ideas, breakthroughs, things that are coming through, and you get very anxious or restless, because that's what can happen with Uranus. It's like it's just too much. Do something very practical, ground your idea, and don't let this energy just be too overwhelming. That is the because when things open up, and again, you can have, for example, something, you might be having a conversation and something gets revealed to you, something like unexpected truth, or something that you were not expecting to hear, and suddenly this is like this bucket of cold water just falls in you and you just can't process, this is just this like so this is where we need to be really, really grounded. Take always deep breaths. So whenever you receive an information, when there's too much to process, because this is when there's too much to process, too fast, too quick, too soon, too much, then the grounding happens in practical things. So this is where, instead of getting all the emotions, because again, we have Mercury, it's also in a water sign, it could be very emotional and uncovering deep truths. This is where we have to use the energy of like a little bit of our capacity to harness earth energy, even though right now there's very little earth energy. But this is where we go, okay, let's maybe just do something very task oriented, go put our hands on the ground. If you have a garden, go do a little bit of gardening, just so that you allow the amount of psychic information or just information that can be like overwhelming to calm down. Um, so yeah, I would say if you get a lot of mental stimulus, uh, try not to be too much on social media. Try not to consume too much of information. All the videos and things we're always watching, we're always consuming. I would say just go more to a spot in nature where you can actually connect to peace and allow this overwhelming, probably it could be just something that you hear, a news that you hear. It could be something internal that you experience as well. So go to nature, because nature is the best place where you can actually sit and process, put your hands on the ground, do walking meditations, slow walking meditations that helps move. when you're just, it helps move the mental energy when you're just being more mindful and just walking and observing the environment. So these are ways to deal with these energies. And yes, there's a beautiful time for inspired action. Definitely, when you take those insights and breakthroughs, you can actually start doing something about it. It could be, again, something that helps you resolve an issue that you didn't know how to resolve before. This is a time for that action. And anything that we do that is inspired, again, inspired action. It's not, oh, it's not, I have to do this because this is the right thing. This is not the right energy to be in. The inspired action is, I feel the deep urge to do this because this is serving something bigger than myself, and then you just do it, whatever it is. So I think this is when also, these times, this is when innovation can come through crisis, when you have to have, this is the beautiful thing about Uranus and Mercury, is that when there's a crisis, when you don't know what to do, this is where you get the genius ideas. And because you might be in a moment of crisis, you have to think outside the box. You just have to, you know put something to work. But again, when it's in intention on, or it's within a crisis mode, it can feel like you're like, it's too much. But sometimes the best ideas come from the most difficult situations. The best creative solutions come out of the worst possible scenarios, is when, it's MacGyver. This is the energy of MacGyver. Exactly it. It's in a room, locked, and there's a bomb going or whatever, and they need to get out, and then MacGyver goes and just finds the five things and kind of puts them together, and then boom, and then they escape the room or whatever. This is kind of that energy where you can use the energy and the intelligence, the higher intelligence, to allow for problems to be solved. So this is not me, my little agenda, my little self trying to solve everything. This is allow the universal intelligence to help you solve the problems so you can move forward to whatever it is you're living in your life. So this is a little bit of this second half of the month, the broader energy. So for recap, like, stay grounded, stay in your center. Don't give in to fear. Don't give in to fear of whatever's happening, and don't be the promoter of fear. Take this time to do some healing of that inner child, especially if it's the masculine wound, rejection and all of that stuff. Feeling of unworthiness, all of that will come up for review. So yet another round of this, it's just layers. So, and that's why the planets move in cycles, because you think we did one layer, and then guess what, next layer comes comes about, but then we get better at it. And that is the whole point. Every time we have a layer of something, we already have more tools and more choice and more capacity, and that's how we evolve, right, until the next layer. So in these times, I think we're going to be evolving past our needs to control and manipulate and force and all of that stuff, to give way to more compassion, acceptance. And that is what we're being asked, to be more compassionate, more accepting, of people, more accepting of situations, and literally more human altogether. And that's what we're moving into, right? And it's for the benefit of the whole. And that's what we're looking at. What benefits me and benefits you, and what benefits you benefits me, then we're all together, then we can create together. If either part is oppressed or diminished, it will never work. We all have to be playing in this equal circle where we are all valuable. All right. Well, that was that. A little bit of everything. I will see you in the next video. Hopefully, we make it through these 15 days with ease and grace. I hope you do. Please leave me in the comments below how the energies have been for you since the eclipses, and if anything new happens for you and in these intense times of transformation, then this is great. We can get to experience that all together. I hope this helped you, and I'll see you in the next video in November. Much love to you. Bye.